Hello. Hello. Welcome to Nature Day at the Water Pavilion. If you're just joining us, this is a day dedicated to nature-based solutions and their importance in tackling climate change. So the next session I have the pleasure to introduce is Scaling Nature-Based Solutions for Climate Change Adaptation. And I would like to invite James Dalton, Director for the Global Water Program in IUCN, as the moderator for this session.
Great, thanks very much, Mariana. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this session on scaling nature-based solutions for climate change. Headphones on, that's good. Hopefully everybody can hear us. I'm just going to give a couple of minutes introduction along with my colleague Eric here, and then we'll go into a set of panel speakers, and there's a few videos, and there'll be a few questions, and then that gives, hopefully, towards the end of the session, a chance for you to have your questions to the panelists. So do stay with us, and if you've got questions through the course of the next 50 minutes, please write them down so you don't forget them, and then we can come back to them towards the end. $57 billion of flood damages are averted due to nature-based solutions across China, India, Mexico, and the US, as an example. And that's annually due to the investment in mangroves and coastal protection from natural systems. 37 or up to 37% of climate change mitigation can be handled, can be dealt with, can be stored through nature-based solutions, meeting the Paris Agreement contributions. And up to $170 billion worth is the estimated global benefits of ecosystem services from nature-based solutions, services that we rely upon for our economies, for our individual livelihoods, and for the broader, greater climate change challenges that we have, both adaptation and mitigation. And I think to deal with this, we're hearing of pledges, we're hearing of solutions all the time, but coming with solutions requires also the need to come with the acceptance that brings responsibility. Responsibility for both adaptation and mitigation, but broader sustainable development goals at the same time. And so with that responsibility, we have been working as IUCN on the development of a nature-based solutions standard, a standard for the design, the verification, and the scaling up of nature-based solutions. And this is focused around 8 criteria and 28 indicators, and is compliant with the IUCN Code of Good Practice. And what we want is for people to apply this standard, to learn from its use, to apply the indicators, to self-assess the performance of that and their own work, to learn from that, to scale that, and through investment as well as through continuing good practice and sharing that practice to get the impact that we need from nature-based solutions for climate change adaptation and mitigation. So to start with, over the course of the rest of this session, we're going to hear from presenters who've been scaling nature-based solutions themselves in a variety of different countries and contexts, so we can understand from what they've been doing and understand and identify the challenges that they've had and how we can get across those challenges and really scale that learning in a way that's going to have the impact that we need. So I don't want to talk too long. My role is not to present myself, but to present the others that I have with me today. I'd like to now welcome Dr. Eric Tardieu. He's the Director General from the International Office for Water in France. Eric, please, over to you.
Thank you, James. I will have the same space here. Good afternoon to every one of you. Yes, the nature-based solution approach is not fully new to the community of water. For decades, we've been talking of alternative techniques, for example, for the treatment of rainwater. Just as many of you know that the main treatment for wastewater is a biological treatment, a biological process. And now we have a clear definition through the IUCN standards, and we can define the family of nature-based solutions. And that's important because the pressure on water resources has increased. Of course, climate change, that's our main focus today here in COP26. Changes in average levels, increased frequency of extreme events, both droughts and floods, and a new importance of uncertainties in the field of water. But that's not the only pressure. We always have to deal with the economic, agricultural pressures, urban development that are really important for the management of water resources. So, since we know that we are not in the good speed of implementation of the SDG, and in particular for the SDG 6 about water, we need a very large panoply of solutions, and nature-based solutions appear to be really indispensable tools now. At least in theory, because their generalization, their dissemination remains insufficient. We know that, mainly because that's something I suggest for the rest of the session, for the discussion. Two major breaks have to be lifted. The first one would be that the economic models of nature-based solutions that are now well described in many cases and demonstrated, but we need a better communication, a better dissemination of the results about the effectiveness, about the efficiency of nature-based solution, in order to better explain to both private and public decision makers the long-term business case of nature-based solutions. Second break that we need to address is that we do lack human resources to implement these types of solutions. They require different skills, skills that are different from the traditional skills that we are well aware of in the field of water, skills that are conventionally implemented by water professionals. So it is necessary to train nature-based solutions designers, specialists of ecological engineering, architects of natures, would some of you say maybe, people that would be able to take charge of these new approaches, both for their initial design and their integration into the environment, as well as for their long-term maintenance. And so in the end, the widespread use of nature-based solution is a question of security, water security, ecological security, and together they have to be managed better. Thank you for your attention. James, back to you.
Great, thank you very much, Eric. So we're going to hear from our first speaker, but before he says anything, he has a video to show us. So please, if you can watch the screen. This is a video from Alejandro Gutierrez. He's from Reconstrucción con Cambios in Peru. So if we can have the video up.
Todo se nos fue.
La lluvia era tan fuerte que el techo colapsó.
Las paredes se rajaron.
Los animales muertos, ahogados, que se ahogaron con el agua, estaban todos ahí muertos.
Y en el área de neopediatría, el agua empezó a entrar.
Algunas aulas se cayeron.
No teníamos alimentos, todo fue barro.
The damage caused by a climate disaster is not only about losing your school, your home, people you love. It's also about losing hope. Between December 2016 and March 2017, the El Niño phenomenon caused severe flooding and devastating landslides across the coast of Peru. Almost 1 million people were affected, and $5 billion worth of essential infrastructure, assets, and services were lost.
La gente quería progreso en vez de promesas, y nosotros queríamos una reconstrucción con cambios para construir un nuevo camino y recuperar la confianza.
In 2020, as COVID-19 took hold, the Reconstruction with Changes Authority entered into a collaboration with the UK government and a partnership of British companies to help accelerate the Reconstruction with Changes programme.
The role of the UKDT is to bring their international best practice experience to reconstruct 74 schools, 15 hospitals and health centres, and to implement comprehensive flooding solutions in northern Peru.
It's about more than just reconstruction, it's about empowering resilience in the communities and in the nation. When people start to see that change is possible, that's when they can start to believe in a more sustainable and a safer future.
We have been working with the Authority of Reconstruction with Changes to introduce international best practice in the transparent procurement of contractors and collaborative contracting, along with the latest digital project management and planning tools. Coupled with formal and informal training, we are ensuring the greatest possible value and return on investment for Peru.
This is reconstruction, yes, but with change. We are investing our specialism to design more resilient facilities and sustainable infrastructure towards building better here in Peru. A huge component of this is transferring knowledge.
The technology, the knowledge, the experience, everything stays. We are leaving a legacy of development as well as progress.
The improved design standards and increased capacity of public officials and contractors will benefit not just this programme, but other major infrastructure, all due to be built across Peru in the years ahead. Flood defences for 17 rivers, better drainage for 7 cities, and state-of-the-art national early warning systems will protect new public infrastructure as well as lives and livelihoods.
As a team, we're learning the lessons of the past and we're helping Peru prepare for a more sustainable and safer future.
Nature-based solutions are also being used to reduce flood risk.
51,000 hectares of land will be shaped, terraced and planted with approximately 56 million tree seedlings to manage water, reduce erosion, capture carbon and create new green environment.
Este proyecto de infraestructura natural va a permitir miles de empleos.
The ultimate measure of success of the UK delivery team is to not be needed in the future. Our shared legacy will be for progress to continue long after we have finished.
Estamos muy emocionados por la construcción de este nuevo hospital. Nos va a permitir brindar una mejor atención al paciente y se va a sentir satisfecho con esta atención.
Me siento feliz porque mi nuevo colegio va a ser de 2 pisos, va a tener más luz y las paredes no van a estar rajadas.
Bueno, yo me sentiría tranquila, ¿no? Contenta al ver que ya no va a pasar lo que pasó anteriormente, ¿no?
So come with us and witness one of the greatest legacies a government-to-government project has ever left behind. Because reconstructing infrastructure changes lives, but reconstructing hope can change the future of an entire nation.
So thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I think the idea was to introduce in this next 5 minutes, it's 5 and 5, the effort that we are undertaking with the Peruvian government. I am Alejandro Gutierrez, director of ARUP, one of the companies that is supporting with technical advisory the Peruvian government. I'm representing Amalia Moreno, who is the director of reconstruction, because she couldn't make it today to Peru because she's quite busy and her agenda didn't allow her to come in person. I'm one of the technical directors of the UKDT in Lima. So quickly I'll present sorry if this works. Yeah, sorry, there you are. I think we've heard what we've heard from Amalia, sorry, from the video. The people affected were, as you know, many. There were 114 casualties and loss of capital investment of around $5 billion US. I think the idea of today is to focus on the integrated nature of the work that we are undertaking. One of the important things is that these watersheds, which is 17 of them, which if you put them together equate to almost the surface area of England, to have a very comprehensive approach in which the schools and hospitals that you saw before are also undertaking a multi-hazard risk assessment to locate them in the right position and to mitigate whatever is required in terms of the risks to mass movements, to flooding and other type of risks. And within the basin, the upper part of the basement, which the upper catchment of the basin, of the river basins, are all dealt with nature-based solutions that we will talk about briefly in a minute. Then in the second section of the watershed, we're talking about regulation, both lamination and some sort of, lamination and irrigation depending on the case, which includes both or one of them. And then on the lower part of the rivers, we're talking about flood defenses and maintaining and preserving the ecological systems and the specific, let's say, sensitive habitats that you have around them. One of the important points of this proposition was to talk about the gaps on information and capacities that make difficult to implement these things and then to maintain and operate them over time. And I think one of the important points that we've tried to put forward is a comprehensive approach to the implementation of projects. We have this approach, which is about 4 different sectors, about the government. I think we are not, sorry. This is, no, this is not the right presentation. This is not the right, I think I'll speak to the topic instead of, this is not my presentation. This was part of my presentation, but the rest is not. So I'll speak to the nature-based solution. So basically what we have is integrated solutions for 17 river basins, in which we are talking about a plan of reforestation and afforestation that will undertake, as you heard from one of my colleagues, 54,000 hectares of planting, which includes 55 million trees that will be planted in the next 5 years. There is a procurement process now, which starts on the 17th of November, through the Reconstruction Agency and the UKDT, and we invite all of the parties that are going to be interested in terms of providing services and products to the reconstruction effort on the water basins that we're talking about and the reforestation to participate in that process. The investment is going to be massive for the scale of Peru. And I think this is the presentation, yes. So this is what I was talking about, the specific solutions, integrated solutions. And I think the most important thing is that we're working also with the emergency prevention agencies of INDECI and Tsunami, and we are setting up, at the same time that we're setting up the reforestation component of the program of reconstruction, a state-of-the-art nationwide early warning system for the whole of the country to look at both the flooding component, the mass motion component, and the the peak rains that are coming with the events like El Niño. So it's both an adaptation and mitigation approach. In terms of nature-based solutions, I really encourage those that are present here, like one of my colleagues, which is here, to participate in the procurement of this 17 river basin upper catchment reforestation programs, which will include terracing, soil improvements, the use of local species and the creation of nurseries at a massive scale in order to meet the requirement of these 50 so million trees that we need to plant within the upper catchment of these 17 river basins. I would like to finish, and I'm sorry, this presentation. Next slide. As you can see there, those are yeah, I'll stop. Can you go back to the, yeah. I would like to finish with this, where I would like to also note that the effect of, or the impact more than the effect of the undertaking that we are showing here will create a sequestration of carbon in the region of 750,000 tons per year. And that equates to more or less half of the production of CO2 in scope 1, 2, and 3 for the whole of the country in Peru. So it is a significant amount of sequestration, and I'm very pleased and honored that the Peruvian government is putting this level of funding and this level of effort to achieve a solution that is unique, I would say, in scale and ambition globally. I'll leave it there, and I'm sorry that I don't know why the presentation was the wrong one, but I hope I can respond to other questions later.
Great, thanks, Alejandro. Now, you can stay with us, or you have to go? You can stay. Excellent, great. Okay, thank you very much for that. So we're now going to go on to our next speaker, Ms. Camille Jepang. Camille, are you there? From Yaoundé, I'm assuming, in Cameroon. She's a program coordinator for KFW, and she has some slides to show. Thank you. Over to you, Camille.
Hello, do you hear me, please?
We do. We hear you.
Okay. I don't see if you are seeing the slide already.
Camille, can you log off and I will share your screen?
Okay. Okay, I'll stop.
Okay, the slides are up, Camille. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. Good afternoon, everyone. So I am Camille Jepang. I am the portfolio coordinator of the green sector at KFW in Yaoundé. And in my previous life, I worked with IUCN and collaborated with the International Water Office. So I am going to present to you the process of development of an adaptation project to establish water management mechanism on the Naga River Basin that is in Cameroon. And so it's basically to present some lessons learned on the process. So we're presenting the global context, the main component of the project, and some core activities related to nature-based solutions and where the process stands now. So as the global context, since the One Planet Summit that took place in December 2017, international community committed for the development of about 100 water climate projects for Africa in 5 years. This was as a contribution to the Paris Agreement and also to establish the Global Alliance Platform for Water and Climate. And furthermore, we have France-based water agencies who committed to develop about 20 fundable projects ideas on climate adaptation. An International Water Office, that is OIEau, was or is one of the leaders of this process. So in Cameroon, next slide, please. Cameroon is one of the benefiting countries of this initiative. So International Water Office, in partnership with the government of Cameroon and financial assistance of Agence de l'eau Rameuse, supported development of a project on the Naga River. And with the lead ministry of, as Ministry of Energy and Water, others, we have other sectoral, about 8 sectoral ministries who are also involved in the project. The National Observatory of Climate Change, some traditional and religious leaders, the private sector, and some technical partners, IUCN, Global Water Partnership, and so on. Next, please. Cameroon is part of about 3 transboundary basins, that is and it belongs to International Water Corporation, Niger Basin Authority, the Lake Chad Basin Commission, the Congo Basin Commission, and it also belongs to some economic agency, ECAS, CEMAC, AMCAO, and it benefits some assistance of some technical partner, IUCN, Global Water Partnership, and so on. So water is being managed in Cameroon using a law that was adopted in 1998, but there's a new national water policy which is under development, which is under adoption. And also a situation analysis of integrated water resources management was carried out in 2009. And that situation analysis is being now updated to elaborate the integrated water resources management plan itself. Concerning the Naga River Basin, it is the next slide, Andrea, please. It is the main river basin of Cameroon. It's the largest river of the country, and it has about 920 kilometers long length, and it covers a surface area of about 140,000 square kilometers. It goes across many regions of the country, and it represents about 1/4 of the country's water resources. That's a very rich biodiversity and diverse ecosystem. 90% of the hydroelectric production and projected power plant development in Cameroon is on the Naga River. And we have about 5 million people living in the vicinity of the basin, with 65%, which are mostly rural people. We have some critical biological sites in the basin, so many protected areas. We have the Douala Idea National Park, Dendeng National Park, but also is experiencing, the basin experiencing some significant environmental crisis in the mining areas. And it also suffers from the impacts of climate change as concerning the level of water. So a part of hydroelectricity and domestic water use. Next slide, please, Andrea. The Naga River Basin is also used for sand extraction, livestock, continental fishing, and agriculture. So this next place makes the Naga River a various strategic interests. So it's a major development axis for Cameroon through hydroelectricity, source of livelihood of population, is the heart of Cameroon biodiversity. So given this diverse interest, there is a need for a concerted process for the equitable use of water resources and protection of the ecosystem with its rich biodiversity. So this is a little bit the background or the justification of the project that was developed, or that has been developed with the International Water Office to support the government of Cameroon. So the project, the main objective of the project, next slide, please, Andrea. So we have 3 main objectives. The first one is to set up and operationalize a basin commission for the Naga River. The second one is to develop a strategic action plan for the water management on the Naga River. And the third one is to implement some pilot priority investment in the Naga River, so especially for the protection of the ecosystem. Next, please. So we have 3 main components, which is derived from the 3 objectives. That is the establishment of the Basin Commission, development of the strategic action plan to support the Basin Commission, and implementation of priority investment. That includes access to drinking water and sanitation in priority area, ecosystem protection in pilot area, resilient development of irrigation, and flood and pollution control. So what are some related activities and the core activities of the project to nature-based solution? Next, please. So for this activity, key entry points is the protection of fragile ecosystem, that is mangrove reserve parks, restoration of degraded ecosystem, forest, floodplains, and climate change adaptation strategies. So we have these activities that is proposed in the project. Is just some of them, things with the time. Carry out studies to assess the state of wetlands. We have to develop a strategic restoration and adaptation plan, implement protection measures and restoration actions, raising awareness of stakeholders on sustainable management of these wetlands and associated ecosystem, capacity building on sustainable management of ecosystem, and the implementation of some specific projects on protection of fragile ecosystem and preservation of water-related biodiversity. So some expected impacts from this nature-based solution is a better resilience of population and territories to climate change, is healthier terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem of the basin, improve and sustainable access to essential services, that is drinking water and sanitation, electricity, and concerted management of water resources between different users. The next one, please. So concerning the process, where's the process stand now? Maybe to start by the approach, we carry out some stakeholder consultative workshop that was at the national level and also at the level of some sub-basin to discuss with all the stakeholders on the stakes and on different pilot activities focused on nature-based solutions and adaptation to climate change. We organized some exchange of experience between stakeholders of the basin with Burkina Faso, who are very keen on integrated water resources management. That is on the establishment of the Basin Commission, but also on some pilot activities to be implemented in the basin. So nowadays, we have a diagnosis which has been completed and which is available. We have the project document that has been finalized and submitted. So as the next step, we have to mobilize funding for the project to implement the project. For now, World Bank is very interested to support the establishment of the Basin Commission, which we hope it will be very soon. And the French Development Agency is also, we are under discussion to see if they can finance these pilot activities related to nature-based solutions. So that is quickly what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Camille. Thank you for that. Excellent. Now, if we can now move on to Tamara, Ms. Tamara Kutanova. She's an independent environmental consultant. We can see you, Tamara. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
Hello to everyone.
And your slides should be up in a minute, and you're going to talk to us about river restoration, I understand. Excellent.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Thank you. Over to you.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much for joining you, the company of people who we have met previously. And quickly, I would like to say that at the moment, I'm an independent environmental consultant, but the results which are going to be presented now is the work done in a series of projects. So this is done on behalf of the teams, and we have agreed on the content as well. And you will see the names of the projects and the donors who supported these activities at the end of the presentation. So the next slide, please. Yes. So our team worked in the Dniester River Basin. This is the transboundary basin in Europe. So you can see on the first picture the orange arrow showing where this basin is. So it is shared by two countries, the Republic of Moldova and Ukraine, which used to be 30 years ago in one country in the Soviet Union, but then this union collapsed. So, of course, the cooperation between these two new countries has renewed. So here on the second picture, you can see the analysis of the climate change scenarios until 2020. We did it at that moment, and also you can understand more or less the shape and the geography of the basin. Next slide, please. We have done a lot of different things in the Dniester Basin. We helped to support the Dniester Commission to develop and sign and ratify the Dniester Treaty, etc., etc. We did all this with the support of the UNEC Water Convention. But since here we're talking about the adaptation to climate change, I would focus on this particular issue. So in the framework of our activities, together with the governments, with the scientists, with NGOs, we developed, first of all, the vulnerability assessment of what is going to happen in the Dniester Basin with the time on the condition of climate change and the different scenarios. So based on that, we developed the strategic framework for adaptation to climate change. And that was a very much participatory process, long process. And based on this strategic framework, we developed the implementation plan. All the documents are available in English, and you can see the links to the website of the Bilateral Dniester Commission. Thank you. Next slide. Here you can see the scheme for the key priority adaptation measures in this Dniester Basin. With orange arrows, I have tried to show you that we have a particular block of ecosystem-based adaptation measures, and on the map you can see where majority of these measures are proposed. Next slide, please. So some of the nature-based solutions proposed in the Dniester Basin are as follows. To mitigate the droughts, these are the assessment and monitoring of the condition of forests, of course, not new. Then this is the protection and restoration of forests, floodplains, and shoreline vegetation. As the previous speakers have already mentioned, all these activities are not only adaptation to climate change, but this is also the increase of the carbon capacity, absorption capacity of these ecosystems. So this could in the future be the offset projects for the companies, for example. And of course, we target the issue of biodiversity conservation. And also another set of the nature-based solutions proposed in the strategic documents are about reduction of losses from deterioration in water quality. And so this is the protection and regulation of the use of catchment basins and water protection zones. Of course, we know that the flood protection is also very much about the nature-based solutions, but here I was just showing you some extracts of our ideas, directions of future work. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I would like to show you the 3 cases which we managed to implement in the recent 10 years. And the first case is about the restoration of water exchange between the Dniester River, the main course of the river, and the floodplain. This floodplain is actually very close to the mouth of the river. And the issue was that there is a big road with several bridges going through the river and the floodplain, and at certain moments the passages which allowed for transition of the water from the river course to the floodplain, they were blocked. So the water was not coming to the floodplain, and of course it resulted in the overgrowth of this territory. So we were basically losing the floodplains which should have been covered with grass, and it was overgrown with bushes. And of course, we were losing the valuable nestling and breeding areas for fishes and birds. So what we did with the heavy technique, of course, with environmental impact assessments, with engineering projects, we have cleared 800 meters of the natural channel which was connecting the river and the floodplain. So we have managed to connect the river with the floodplain, which is a very much natural connection, of course. And the bushes, which were the invasive species, left this area, and we also see that the birds and fishes are coming back to this area. And of course, this also played a big role in decreasing the flood risk of a nearby road. As I mentioned to you, that this area is the neighborhood of the protected area and the roads, which of the national and international importance. Should you like, please have a look at the video link to which you have here now, but I'm not going to take your time for this now. Next slide, please. And here is just brief demonstration on about how the area looked before we intervened and after. Of course, where there is much water in the floodplain is always good. Thank you. Next slide. Another case is about deforestation of the Ramsar sites, the sites of international importance, wetlands of international importance for wetlands, for waterfowl and water birds. Of course, this is not new afforestation as a nature-based solution, but since in our region there is not enough understanding of the value of the nature-based solution, and also there is an issue of financing such such events. And also there is an issue of who would do the activity and who would do the post-monitoring, which is of course very much important for such type of project. That is why we still decided that we would share this experience with you. So we have done the afforestation of 7 hectares of the area next to the Dniester River. With this, of course, we partially solved the issue of flood risk, so we have minimized it. We have, of course, contributed to strengthening the riverbanks, and as colleague of ours from Cameroon has just mentioned, this was also the activity which supported raising public awareness. And of course, we have to work with people doing such activities, not to have the conflict with them, and to raise the new generation of people who do care about the environment and understand the connection between the society and the environment. And also, since partially this activity was done in Transnistrian region of Moldova, this is difficult from political point of view region, we also did this as a confidence building measure. Thank you. Next slide, please. And as last case study is about the restoration of a small river. In our regions, there is an issue with the health, let's say, of small rivers. There are many rivers which are perennial, and those who regularly run during the year. But the issue is with very bad agricultural practices. Sometimes farmers just go through the floodplain and through the riverbed when there is no river in the summer in the south, for example. And then the river just, let's say, disappears. And of course, there is an issue of eutrophication, overgrazing, etc., etc. So we paid attention to almost 9 kilometers of a small river, which is a tributary to the Dniester River. We did huge work with the local population, with local authorities, and they were very much supportive to this. And I would say that it was also one of the criteria for the selection of the area for the restoration, the support of the local population. We also received huge attention and support from the central water and environment authorities, and I would say that this is one of the lessons learned. So go there where you have the support. So we have restored this section of the river. We have reduced the overgrowth of the reeds, which is of course not about the rich biodiversity, but something about the kind of waste species. We have restored part of the floodplain, and as mentioned, we worked with the population again, raising public awareness about the work and about the need to continue this in future. Also, we have a short video about it. Here you have the link to the a permanent link to the video. In future, this would be at the site of the Dniester Commission as well. You will have the link at the very end of the presentation. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yes, and here is again the demonstration how it looked before, gloomy, and how it looks now cheerfully. Thank you. Next slide. And lessons learned. This is what I wanted to share with you, because even when we started, we knew that it would be very hard, and we wanted to be as successful as possible, having the limited resources we had. So first of all, as I mentioned, the nature-based solutions are at the very early stage of implementation in our region. So not many people know about it, both from a point of view of understanding why we need it, and from the perspective of how to do it. So every single example is the contribution to this growing process. As mentioned, the strong interest and support of the central environment and water authorities and local community and authorities are very crucial for success of the efforts. Next, financing rivers restoration is expensive and is an issue in the region. And last one is that the nature-based solutions help to involve various stakeholders within the entire basin and promote transboundary cooperation overall. Since we're talking about the transboundary river here, we decided to make this this accent, this focus about the transboundary cooperation, because I think that it's pretty much clear that the rivers and the ecosystems and the issues we have now, like the climate change and biodiversity loss, of transboundary nation and nature. And of course, there are no borders for these issues. So here you have the logos and the titles of the projects within which these activities were done. I think that those professionals who are listening to this presentation now understand that these are highly difficult technical and financial and resource taking activities, but we have managed this, and I would still say that since this is the experience of 11 years already, we're still proud of them, and we know that these experiences are still being replicated in the region and in the world. So please take this on board as well. Final slides. Yes, so these are the links should you like to know more about these activities and other activities in our transboundary basin. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm ready to answer your questions should they have arisen during the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamara. Okay, so please hold your questions. There's some questions coming in online, which we'll come to in a minute. We're going to hear from our final two presentations now, from Louise Bingham and David Hetherington, both from Arup. Louise, over to you, I believe, and you will take over this and then hand to David. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, James. Yes, my name is Louise Bingham. I'm going to be speaking about stimulating climate change adaptation across the rural to urban continuum alongside my colleague from Arup, David Hetherington. So we're going to summarise some examples where nature-based solutions have enabled communities to adapt and build resilience to climate change at the catchment scale in rural settings through the Water Up project, down to the local village and management basin scale with the Wash Basins Toolkit, before summarising some approaches in urban settings through the Shanghai Urban Drainage Master Plan. So firstly, Water Up is a community engagement project between Arup and the Flow Partnership, aiming to upskill remote communities with more sustainable and reliable water management practices in recognition that there can be no urban resilience without rural resilience. So the project was formed to help tackle water scarcity, which currently affects over 40% of the global population, which equates to approximately 3.2 billion people. And this is only projected to worsen as climate change results in increasingly erratic and extreme weather, combined with rising global temperatures. So the vast majority of the affected populations are located in semi-arid regions in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa, which also contain the greatest number of rural poor and the highest incidence of rural poverty. So this issue is particularly apparent across India, where over half the population face high or extremely high water stress. Further, groundwater supplies have been depleted, overexploited and reaching unsustainable levels, yet a large proportion of their population rely on groundwater for their livelihoods. So the link between poverty and water scarcity is well established here. Different techniques have been used across India to tackle unique challenges of different geographies within the country for centuries. But many of these techniques have been forgotten as modern methods of practice, governance and ownership have dominated. One charity, Tarun Bharat Sangh, led by Dr. Rajendra Singh, have worked to reinvigorate traditional solutions in Rajasthan in northern India for the past 40 years. They've built over 12,000 Johad structures, which are essentially earth check dams which capture and store monsoon rainfall. When placed strategically across the catchment, they intercept ephemeral flow paths and store water at the surface and enable groundwater recharge. This simultaneously refills the water supply for village wells and provides water for irrigation, wildlife and livestock. They don't require any heavy plant or machinery or complicated technology to build, but they do require a basic understanding of the local environment and hydrology. So we mapped a portion of these JOHADs in the Sarsa catchment, which is pictured here. These 300 or so features have resulted in numerous direct benefits to the local communities, including water supplementation for household use, food production, and groundwater recharge. We've quantified this ourselves through remote sensing analysis and NDVI analysis, which indicates that vegetation cover increased by over 15% following the implementation of JOHADs. So based on this success in the Sarsa catchment, we built a new JOHAD and repaired an existing JOHAD to fully understand the kind of implementation process. We use a combination of light machinery and local equipment with members of the local community directly involved in the construction process, as anecdotal research by Tarun Baratsang indicates that these methods enable the local people to replicate work elsewhere and carry out any necessary maintenance as required. So these are the two completed JOHADs following just one monsoon season, where the tailback of surface water already extends over 1 kilometre. Combined, these two new JOHADs now directly supply over 1,000 people with clean and reliable drinking water year-round. The impact is obvious, and within a couple of months of the monsoon rain, the local community in Cesari had already planted new fields alongside the JOHAD, which provided a source of irrigation. The benefits are obvious and immediate, so we began to create educational materials to share these approaches with other communities also living in semi-arid regions of the world. So we used footage of the construction and restoration of both of those JOHADs, from site selection all the way through to the completed JOHADs filling up with monsoon rainwater. This includes hydrological principles and guidance on the use of rainwater harvesting features, such as not building the JOHADs immediately upstream of houses, for instance. So our graphic designers in Arup pulled this together alongside animation and graphic design to produce a language-neutral educational film. This is understood to be the first tool of its kind that doesn't rely on any spoken word or text to teach sustainable water management practices, making it accessible regardless of literacy level, language, or cultural differences. To test the kind of global transferability of the film, we screened the film to local communities in neighbouring villages within Rajasthan before taking it to an entirely new community in La Guajira, Colombia. La Guajira is another part of the world which struggles with prolonged droughts, and we hope that the learnings from our film will result in new water management structures in this region, for which we're currently working alongside WaterAid Colombia to develop this. The film is now globally and freely available on the Flow Partnership's Water School platform, and you can also learn more about the project by visiting our virtual Water Up World on this link shown here. We're sharing this resource as widely as possible with government institutions, NGOs, and academic institutions in the hope that it will reach communities in need. We saw this as an opportunity to reach as many people as possible during a time when 85% of the population has access to a mobile phone, but almost a third still lack access to safe drinking water. So by educating rural communities, they can be upskilled and enabled to better manage their own resources at a catchment scale, whilst making meaningful progress towards global achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'll now hand you over to David.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to all the speakers so far, and thank you to Louise for giving an insight into how nature-based solutions can be transformative at the regional scale in remote rural settings. Louise and I have seen firsthand how this work contributes to climate change adaptation and sustainable development goal delivery, and we're now doing whatever we can to share our educational materials that we've produced, so please have a look at them if you can. I would now like to give a quick introduction to two other projects led by my colleagues at Arup that have considered nature-based solutions at different scales in quasi-rural and in city settings. Crucially, both projects have utilised digital technology in order to prescribe and encourage deployment of nature-based solutions efficiently and at scale. So firstly, The Water Sanitation and Hygiene Basins Toolkit is a great example of how nature-based solutions can play a role in improving both water quantity and water quality in a sustainable manner. Here, a digital toolkit and Android application were developed that embedded UN integrated water resources management best practice principles in the routine delivery of WASH. This empowers communities and local governments to adapt and increase resilience themselves. The tools allow stakeholders to better make decisions on water resource management, resulting in well-designed, appropriately located nature-based solutions as part of long-term village water management plans. And a global version of this toolkit is currently being developed at the moment. Secondly, now at the city scale, holistic systems thinking was applied in Shanghai to develop a stormwater master plan. The plan successfully integrated grey infrastructure and nature-based solutions, as well as governance proposals to tackle a complex problem at the city scale. Here, digital systems and automation were key to processing large spatial data sets efficiently and accurately. Specifically, machine learning and digital analysis were used to characterize areas and identify the best opportunities for nature-based solutions in the context of a city. This project demonstrates how advanced digital technology can assist in planning effective, integrated blue, green, and grey solutions as part of adaptation in constrained city environments. So just to conclude, nature-based solutions have some fundamental principles across the rural and urban continuum, across all scales. However, different opportunities exist in each context, and solutions need to be tailored and well-designed. So an important point is that nature-based solutions need to be resilient in themselves in order to provide resilience for us and resilience generally. Communities are crucial to the creation and long-term sustainability of nature-based solutions if they are to be deployed widespread in a manner that is global, which we need. So we can't afford to wait for government action world over. Linked to this, freely available and widespread education is vital to empowerment for climate change action. Across the scales, digital technology presents huge opportunities for planning and implementation and dissemination of educational materials on nature-based solutions. Fundamentally, well-designed, implemented, and maintained nature-based solutions achieve many sustainable development goals. And importantly, these solutions can be iterative to account for climate change uncertainty, so we can adapt how we respond. And on that point, robust solutions that implement climate change action and living standard improvement are often one and the same. So on behalf of Louise and I, and everyone involved in the projects that we've presented, thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Louise, for that. Could I ask all of the panelists who are remote to put your cameras back on so that we can see you? And Alejandro, can I invite you up to the stage now so we have some chance for questions and hopefully some discussion amongst you all? Is Camille there as well? Ah, yes, there she is. Excellent. So now it's the chance for you. You've listened to a fairly rapid set of presentations, I realize, but now it's over to you as the audience, both here with us in Glasgow, but also online, to use the YouTube chat to put forward your questions. There's already some of those coming in. And if you have a question, who is it for? Or is it just a general point? Let's see if anyone here has a question to start with. Does anybody have any questions for the panelists or the presentations you've heard today? One at the back there, please, sir. Yes, if you could just give your name and the institution you represent, so we can get a picture on that. Can we get a microphone to him? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm called Kalisti Ndumugaya from Uganda. I'm happy to listen to these presentations. And what all the speakers mentioned is that nature-based solutions are new, they are not yet fully taken up, and yet they are not necessarily complicated. So what could be the reason for this, and what do we need to do to ensure that they are fully adopted across the world? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Khalid. I didn't recognize you with the mask on. There was another question here. Yes, please, sir. We'll get a mic.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Johnny from CABI, the Centre for Agriculture and Bioscience International. I was just wondering, one of the key issues that we've looked at with nature-based solutions is the impact of invasive species, both in terms of invasive tree species and water species as well, on damaging some of these water ecosystems. And we've done a lot of work on trying to sort of remove those in a sustainable way. Has this become an issue for any of you in the projects that you've described? And if so, how have you tried to overcome some of those challenges of invasive plant species? Thanks.
Right. Okay, thanks very much, Johnny. There's actually a question online as well asking a very similar question about what's the opinion of the panelists as to the role of exotic species. And I'm assuming they're thinking about using reforestation as a rehabilitation mechanism and therefore looking at plantations as a solution. So that's a question to the panelists. Do we have another question at all here in the room? Yeah, at the back there, please.
Hi there, Chris Brooks from Oxford Policy Management. I was just wondering about the replanting, the tree planting that in the 12 river basins in Peru, and what the land tenure situation was. I think it was 56,000 hectares and potential community involvement around that land.
Great, thanks very much, Chris. So I think that's a question direct to you, Alejandro, very much on the land tenure situation, effectively the land governance elements. Then a question on invasive species, which you're welcome to take on as well, and we'll come back to others on that. And then also the challenge of making nature-based solutions happen. Elements of this are not particularly complicated, so why is it so hard to make this actually happen at a scale that has the impact that we're really looking for? So Alejandro, if I can hand that to you first.
I'll just respond to that one so we can share the answers, sure. Right? Yep. The land tenure is quite mixed, quite distributed. I mean, there's very small land owners up to bigger ones. So that is being discussed with all of them because it requires them to buy into that process. In terms of the implementation, it's going to be tough in the sense that the timetable is quite stringent. But the level of investment that the government is putting to make that soil, or that slopes in particular, stable is massive. So I think there's a good trade-off there between those landholders that are seeing their land disappear, basically, and the ability to retain soil, water, and planting as an investment that is coming directly from government. So I think there's there's good predisposition from landowners. I think, as in any statistical sample, there is a majority that is more or less in agreement with this, and then you have the two extremes. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Alejandro. So on the question around invasive species, our virtual panel, does anybody want to tackle that question? Raise your hand if you're wanting to take that one on. Yeah, please. David, yes, please.
Yeah, I think it comes down to design. You mentioned at the start of the session being architects of nature. Nature-based solutions, wherever we can, should be focused on ecosystem restoration rather than tree planting solely, or a single species approach, or a single topology approach to nature-based solutions. And I think if we really understand what the reference condition ecosystem should be, we understand the needs of the environment, and then we can be those architects of nature and the ecosystem restoration properly includes the appropriate species for wherever it may be.
Okay, thanks, David. Tamara, how about the question around overall the challenge of making nature-based solutions happen? You gave us some really practical examples, but how hard was it to get that far along? What's the real limiting factors, and how do you get that to scale?
Right. Here I would like to say that when you discuss with the communities, with authorities, with people who provide funding, that you would like to suggest this type of project, I would say that you have to be smart and to understand with whom you talk, so that you don't really speak directly that this is a nature-based solution, that this is such a fantastic fantastic theory, which is so much in trend. No, you rather speak with people using their own language, because as mentioned, nature-based solutions bring to huge number of benefits to everyone: flood protection, drought management, etc., etc. So in our cases, for example, it was very clear that if the water passages under the bridges are blocked and the road is overflown and during the floods. So we were speaking rather in terms of flood protection and flood management rather than nature-based solutions. So we have to be creative in communicating.
Excellent, thank you. So training and communication is a key strategy to mobilize nature-based solutions. What about invasive species in your restoration work?
Yes, right. In our case, we also studied the species of trees and bushes which we could suggest for afforestation, and we did it together with the experts on forestry, and they also considered the changing climate conditions, so they offered us the number of species which we could also offer the communities, but we also bumped upon one species, which is Robinia pseudoacacia, which came to Europe some more than 100 years ago, and according to IUCN classification is an invasive species in our region. But since this species has been with us for so long, it is already almost the part of the natural ecosystem. But still, we, for example, did not recommend planting these trees in our areas of pilot projects. This was one of the approaches. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Tamara. Okay. Any more questions here in the room? Yes, please. Just give your name and the institution you're from, please.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm a graduate student at Indiana University in the United States. And my question is, well, I'm hearing that engaging with communities and stakeholders is really important. But I'm wondering how to engage them and encourage them to participate when they're not wanting to engage and show up and give their insight and experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Any more questions? Yeah, please.
Thank you. Phil Fieldhouse from Global Ocean Trust. Now, there's obviously quite a big funding gap in getting nature-based solutions and nature-based infrastructure implemented. And I was wondering how you approach the business case for this and whether your projects are tracking any financial metrics or economic benefits.
Okay, thanks very much, Phil. Okay, two good questions. So the first one on how do you engage those who don't want to be engaged, essentially, and how do you deal with that? And the second one being about how are you looking at making this financially sustainable? Where's the investment potentially going to come from in the future? Where are the benefits potentially going to accrue out of these types of programs and projects? So does anybody want to tackle that one? I was looking at you really, Alejandro, because I was going to also ask you about you're looking at this from a restoration, rapid recovery perspective. And I wondered how that also plays out in terms of lessons for others. Looking at it quickly, you've got to take into account those who don't want to be consulted and finance side.
I'll respond to the second one. So sure. I'll leave, the rest to respond both to the second one and the first one. So on the financial side, I think it's more of a kind of the social cost and benefit of the intervention, because this is, in the case of Peru, is coming from taxpayers' money. So it is about the return on the social and environmental return on investment, and that's what we're trying to capture through the let's call it improved Ministry of Economy and Finance in Peru methodology for social and cost benefit analysis. So in that regard, provided it has accounted for, let's say, carbon capture, it accounts for the risk and the probability of landslides, flooding, the occurrence of those and the avoided damages associated with that, loss of life, etc. If that, within that methodology, which we've slightly refined compared to the methodology of the Ministry of Economy and Finance, if it has a positive social and environmental return on investment, it's funded by the Peruvian government. And that's, I would say, an improved standard methodology, if you want to go like that.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, and then just to finish, the operational maintenance side is much easier in regards of, I would say, 90% of the things that are related to nature-based solutions, because they are, let's say, low cost, right, maintenance, and also because they have a clear, concrete, tangible benefit to the communities, as I was responding in the first question, because they do create value for those that own that land. So that part is kind of easier.
Okay, thanks, Alejandro. Camille, yes, please. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, James. For the first question concerning engagement, how to engage with the community if they are not willing, I think there's nothing more than sensitization, using adapted tools to the context. So as Tamara said, it's very important to use the language of the community to talk to them, to convince them. It's very important to use very simplified tools. So depending on the targeted group, that is, are you talking with women? Are you talking with men? Are you talking with indigenous people? So you need to have some tools, adapted tools, in order to discuss with to convince the community. So for me, there's nothing more than sensitization and awareness raising to really engage with the engage community in the nature-based solutions.
Excellent, thank you, Camille. I see no other hands on the panel, so I'll go to some more questions that are coming in online. So this is quite a general one, and it's open to everybody, but how do you actually, it comes back to things that people have already said, but to get the visibility of these projects in front of people who can actually make the decision to do more of it and replicate and scale them out. I think one of the challenges with nature-based solutions is that they don't happen immediately. It's not like the construction of a boat or a piece of infrastructure where there is something to, you know, smash a bottle of champagne on. And when it comes to nature-based solutions, it's about time, and it's about motivation, and it's about the long term. And I just wondered if there's any suggestions that you've got or any strategies that you've applied to bring people in and understand that this is a longer, slower process. Yeah, David, please.
So I think just based on our experience in Rajasthan, I think you only really get a feel for the power and the magnitude of the multiple benefits when you actually visit sites that are established. So there's a great case study there across a region where you can really see the benefits to people and the environment if you compare it with nearby regions where this work hasn't done. So efforts to get people out there who can influence can be important. And our partners, the Flow Partnership, have done a really good job at making efforts to get people out there who can influence. So I think finding any sort of any local case studies, local examples physically is a very useful tool.
Okay, well, let's go back to the room. Further questions from the room. There's a few more online, but I'm keen we get the room involved a bit further. Yes, please. Microphone for the lady at the back there.
My name is Annette, and I'm also from Uganda, from the Ministry of Water and Environment. I had a question about, first I want to thank the presenters very much. I have a question about the water retention structures. I noticed that they were covering a large area, and I was wondering, is this public land? Is this private land? And if it's private land, then I imagine land must be an issue in that country. How are the people able to accept to have such a large area, put aside for these water retention structures? And I believe this water is used by the rest of the community. So how is this working out? Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Annette. I think that's a question ready for you, Louise. But before we come to you, anybody else here in the room or at the pavilion have a question? Yeah, at the back, Caliste again, please. Uganda is hot on questions today, it seems.
Yeah, I'm just coming back regarding performance indicators. Oftentimes, of course, we say nature-based solutions are good, people can see the benefits. I would like to find out whether there is some work that has been done across the world to actually document the benefits in terms of jobs, in terms of maybe improving resilience, reducing floods, which we can learn from. And personally, I feel that's a gap. We always say it is good, but how good? Do we have the numbers, the economics? And I know the people who give us money always want to hear numbers. Could there be some work that has been done across the world so that we can learn from it? The other one is, how much do we know about nature-based solutions? Has there been maybe a global assessment so that we can know the scale at which this work has been done? Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Caliste. Okay, two really interesting questions. So, Louise, I think we'll come to you first with the first question from Annette on the water retention structures. And then I think it's a question for all, but I'd like to start with you, Annette, Alejandro, in terms of the performance indicators based on the work that's been going on in Peru. Are you measuring, the actual, if you like, the investment, or are you at the stage where you're looking at measuring the outcomes of this? It might be a little bit early, but I think that's the point Caliste is asking, is that at the moment we're very much about driving nature-based solutions, but we're not necessarily looking yet at what the outcome of those interventions have been. There's a lot of questions and a lot of answers to that, but let's just go, if we can just hear from Louise first.
Yeah, so I'd just like to say that the features that we kind of featured here, those two ones that we produced as part of the Water Up project, were actually constructed on common land. But just drawing back on what Camille said earlier about getting that community engagement and speaking their language and getting local people involved, we were really fortunate in working with Tarun Baratsang in Rajasthan, where they have kind of local people, members of those indigenous communities as part of their team, which means that the communication with those local communities in these areas where these features were being built was kind of key throughout, and they are on common land in those instances. And then these again are some of the larger scale features that we've seen in these areas. There are many other instances where using these approaches at smaller features at a strategic scale throughout the catchment can also be very effective in restoring groundwater supplies and surface water kind of availability within a catchment. And again, that's kind of going back at implementing these features at a large scale across a whole catchment, where it can lead to a more equitable distribution of water throughout that catchment, and really at scale is where we need to be to make a real difference.
Thanks very much, Louise. I might come back to you on a question, on a point that you just mentioned, actually, but let's hear from Alejandro first.
I think the water retention in reforestation with terracing is let's say delaying peak flow downstream, and that has very concrete, like monetary benefits in that you reduce the scale of your flood defenses downstream. Right. In the case of two rivers that we're working in Peru, it's between 2 and 8% reduction on the peak flow. So that does reduce the investment downstream, and that is a very tangible, simple point. In terms of water, in terms of how how the government in Peru in this case, with us as advisors, does do this. Depending on the situation, it's either publicly owned land, or the majority is privately owned land. But as I was saying in my earlier response to one of the other members of the audience, is that the slopes today are very unstable, and they are not planted, so they are being erosioned. So those small landowners on their own cannot afford to make their slopes stable, and the investment from the government is welcomed as I was saying, in the majority of the cases. Okay. In terms of the metrics, more metrics than the one I've just mentioned. I think we saw a presentation earlier at 12 from our colleague from the West Balkans that was talking about guidance, that in a global guidance document that is being produced by IUCN on the, let's call it, the objectives and how to measure the impact and the performance of nature-based solutions. And I think that is a very good source of, I would say, reference for the future. And I think it's a public document, if I understand rightly. So I would recommend to look at that one in particular.
Great, thank you very much. We've got chance for one more question in the room. No? Okay, I'll take the opportunity to ask one back to Louise. Louise, you talked about the need to scale up, and I think everybody is at that stage, the need to scale up further. I suppose your work with Arup, and maybe this is a question to everybody, is what's your final word on getting that scaling? You know, is it being able to access climate finance and looking at the mitigation benefits of this work, not just the adaptation benefits? Is it a blend of both of those? Is it about influencing the traditional approach to become the new convention of how we deal with these challenges when it comes to adapting and working with water? If I start with you, Louise, but I'd be interested to take a sentence from everybody on that.
Yeah, I think as with everything, it comes down to finance. Who's going to pay for it? How are we going to implement these features kind of at scale, which hopefully is part of the kind of wider COP26 talks. But yeah, I think trying to get people collaborating where it's working outside of their silos, so it's not just decision makers making isolated decisions which will affect other communities' futures. It's making sure that we're working together with the environmental scientists, with the local communities themselves, with charities and NGOs, to make sure that we're trying to get the best solution for both communities and ecosystems.
Great, thank you very much, Louise. David?
Yeah, just a point to say that I think starting this work is key, in that once you get going and maybe you take a bit of a leap of faith to implement a form of nature-based solutions, and then people can see it, local communities can see it, they can physically and tangibly see the benefits, then that can spread. And I think that can be organic and it can be uplifting when you see that as well.
Thanks, David. Tamara, any final sentence for us? Yeah, okay. Camille?
I think nothing more since we are short with time. Thank you.
Okay. Alejandro, you have any final points on this? You're done. Okay, great. So thanks very much to everybody on the panel. We're going to hear now from Dan Leur. He is the Deputy Mayor of Paris. I understand he's online with us. There he is. Excellent. Thank you, sir, for joining us. You're also the President of Eau de Paris. So I hand over to you to give us some summary points and reflections from the conversation.
Yes, good afternoon. Thanks a lot for the invitation to conclude this very interesting discussion. Many thanks to the French Water Partnership especially. I am Deputy Mayor of Paris in charge of ecological transition. I am also President of Eau de Paris, the public company for the public water supply of Paris. With the intervention of James and about Peru, Ms. Jepang in Cameroon and Ms. Kustunova for the Nestor River, this session has given us a practical example of the benefits of nature-based solution and issues we have to address. Nature is our best asset for climate change mitigation, adaptation, and to tackle the biodiversity crisis. In Paris, as well as in many cities worldwide, drinking water supplies are greatly affected by how land is managed. Improving the health of the lands around the water sources improves water quality, restores reliable water flows, and brings numerous benefits both upstream and downstream. Upstream, forest protection and reforestation safeguards the quality and reliability of water flows. Smart agriculture plays a key role as well. Eau de Paris implements many initiatives of nature-based solutions in our water protection strategy. We are developing agroforestry and sustainable agriculture on our catchment areas. When we know more about natural cycles, then we can start reducing the use of agrochemicals. We choose prevention rather than treatment. Agricultural transition represents a risk and an extra cost for the farmers working on our catchment areas. To support them in their steps, Eau de Paris and the Seine-Normandie Water Agency created an aid scheme to cover this extra cost. This scheme addresses all the stakes in terms of water preservation, reducing the use of phytosanitary products and fertilizers, increasing the diversity of cultures, limiting pollution transfers toward groundwater. The ultimate goal is to reduce water pollution and then reduce the water treatment costs. Benefits are both environmental and economical. We are also working with farmers to reduce runoff, to limit infiltration of pollutants, to reduce soil erosion, and increase the soil power of water purification. We use different tools, edge planting, generalizing grassy strips along the waterways, and creating artificial wetlands. All those initiatives are positive for water quality, climate change adaptation, as well as biodiversity protection. Regarding the city of Paris, we published last September a study documenting new Paris climate trends according to IPCC models. This study analyzes future climate hazards, evaluates urban systems through the prism of these hazards, and determines Paris' vulnerabilities and strengths to climate change. It has shown that in Paris, the 2 degrees Celsius have already been exceeded. Paris has warmed up by 2.3 degrees Celsius, and there is no way back. Paris is especially vulnerable to 3 hazards: extreme heats, floodings, and droughts. Facing these 3 hazards, the risks are high of a major deterioration of urban systems, inhabitants' health, quality of life, and economic prosperity. To face these challenges, nature-based solutions occupy an important place in Paris' climate change adaptation strategy. As for floods caused by heavy rainfall, the Paris Rain Plan aims to reduce the risk of overflows, especially during thunderstorms. In order to absorb rainwater where it falls, we implement a massive greening policy with the creation of garden and green spaces. We aim to plant 170,000 trees by 2026. The networks of wetlands and ponds are created and restored throughout Paris, with identification and incentive programs in each district. The objective is to restore 50 wetlands all over Paris. Yet, residents of central Paris have a mere 5.8 square meters of green space. This is one of the reasons why Paris is vulnerable to the urban heat island phenomenon. Our Oasis Schoolyards project is a way of contributing to the city's effort to create cooler islands. No Parisian lives more than 200 meters from a school, and schoolyards in Paris represent 500,000 square meters that can potentially be transformed and made accessible to neighborhoods residents. So far, we have already transformed 35 schoolyards with more vegetation, shadow, and water, and the goal is to transform all the 700 schoolyards in Paris. We also need to invest in education as a young generation is the future, and as everyone have highlighted in this debate, the key asset is also the involvement of local communities. We know now in Paris what to expect in terms of climate change effects. The time is now. Climate change is already happening, and we need to mobilize for climate adaptation. Nature is, as you have underlined, is our best asset. It is possible, but we have less and less time reminding to do so. Thank you for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for that intervention. Thank you for summarising that up and sharing the experience of Paris with us. Thank you. If I could ask all the panelists to turn their videos back on. Excellent. I just want to thank you all for your interventions and for sharing your experience with us over the course of the last 90 minutes, and to you also, Alejandro, sitting here at the front with us. I want to thank you, the audience, for your questions, both here with us live in Glasgow and those online with us on YouTube. And I want to thank, in particular, our technician who runs all of this from the background and often isn't thanked at all. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, panel. Thank you, all the conveners of the session.